Their service is a part of America's history. Join us as we step into their story.
The 82nd has its own way of doing things in some cases. And so I really learned early on, if you encounter something, a challenge or a problem, you breach or bypass. You just don't wait for someone to solve it. Solve it yourself or move on and get through it. And so that really formed my personality, I think, and how I approach things a lot for the rest of my life. The great thing about the 82nd was there was always something going on, even in the early 80s. So I got to visit multiple countries, multiple states in the U.S., all because of things like that. Went to Grenada in 83, and there was a controlled area at Fort Bragg where they could move units into when they were deploying and isolate you. Move down there, and we get the operations order what we're going to do. And they hand us maps that someone has drawn grid lines over because it's a tourist map. When we found out we're going to an island called Grenada, and they didn't even have military maps for us to use at that point in time. And so I was the RTO for division commander, a gentleman named General Trobaugh, and I upped a satellite radio with secure gear on it. And we were on the lead plane that went in, and we were rigged to jump when we went in. And then the Rangers had jumped in at 5 o'clock that morning, about an hour before we got there, and so they decided to land the C-141s. So we all de-rigged and then offloaded and then began engaged in the operations on the island. For us, it was one of the first deployments in a long time that they had actually deployed the 82nd with all its weapons and equipment. And so we had landed on the island, and when the C-141 landed, it went down to the end of the runway. It did a turn and it lowered its ramp, and as it went back down the runway, we all ran off the back ramp as the plane taxied because they were afraid of mortar fire. The first few days when we got there was evacuation of the students, and you've probably seen the pictures of them all flying back on the planes. Then after we started hunting down the leadership and they were all secured, and the island was stable, we all kind of were just waiting around for the planes to come in and pick us up. So we go up across the berm, and we're all wearing nods. It's at night. We're driving up the road towards El Salmon, and we stop. And we're sitting there in the dark, and all of a sudden we hear this whoosh, and you see a tongue of flame leap up on. First it was our right, and then there was another one on our left. My gunner starts to swing his 50 cal. He starts to swing his 50 cal. I was an XO, so I had a Humvee, and we had a 50 cal on. He starts to swing his 50 cal to what he's going to engage, but it's all outgoing. It just takes you a second to realize it. And so he stopped, and what it was there were two multiple launch rocket system battalions, one on either side of the road, and they were firing in support of our attack into El Salmon. I came to Hood. I was the deputy commander for the 13th Sustainment Command, and then while we were there, ISIS invaded Iraq, and the unit was supposed to go to Kuwait to assume a role in Kuwait. When we got to Kuwait, I was asked if I would go north to Iraq. And so there was a little over about 150 to 200 of us that were up in Iraq initially in late 14, early 2015. And our job was to help rebuild the Iraqi army. When I was a battalion commander in Iraq in 2006 to 7 in 2nd Brigade 1ID, we had a tight command team. We had a tight group of company commanders and soldiers, and they were some of the finest people I've ever had a chance to serve.
Their service is a part of America's history. Join us as we step into their story.